Hey folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Today, nope, not wearing a rugby jersey, wearing a cricket polo. Well, there you go. Black Caps polo from the World Cup in England in 2019. Well, why cricket? Well, where do we start? How do we unpack this nonsense? Cricket South Africa, welcome to the funeral home. What an absolute mess, ladies and gentlemen. What an absolute mess. Now, it broke yesterday that Cricket South Africa was only going to hire black consultants in a blatant, obvious, transparent, racial preference hiring system reminiscent of race-based laws during the apartheid era. In fact, even worse than that. Now, how is it Cricket South Africa can get away with this, and how do we get to this stage? Well, a lot to unpack. I held off making this video for a couple of days while I waited to see the developments taking place. And chief among those were South African cricket players coming out and demanding action before the game we love may be irreparably damaged. Well, what have they said here? Well, South Africa's leading cricketers yesterday condemned what they described as politics and self-interest in the administration of cricket. Wow. In a strongly worded statement, all the country's nationally contracted players, 16 men, 14 women, said Cricket South Africa had lurched from crisis to crisis. Well, it's hard to argue with their position, ladies and gentlemen. They are spot on. Cricket South Africa is an absolute mess. So this statement was issued just in the past, in past recent days. We've seen the recent resignation of Chris Nzani, the sacking of Chief Executive Officer Thabang Moreau, and the resignation of Acting Chief Executive Jacques. Now, he's been replaced on the interim basis by a communications officer from Cricket South Africa, and that's Kungandri Govanda, who's currently sitting in the seat, the hot seat. And she found herself in the unenviable position of making the announcement that we're only going to be hiring black players. Specifically, this is what she said in an interview with Sports 24 on Tuesday. Interim CEO Kungandri Govanda confirmed that the internal measures would extend to all areas of Cricket South Africa, including the Protea men's team. She says, and I quote, "We are now required to enforce black consultants only until such time as the overall numbers are moving in the right direction and we can revise this." That was in a text message. The proviso is that this will be the case unless there are no such consultants available at the level we require in order to keep South Africa at the top of world rankings. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you this has zero to do with rankings, zero to do with professionalism, zero to do with performance, and everything to do with racism. Racism, racism, racism. Wow. According to this new agreement, which is yet to be signed, the Proteas will not be able to employ legendary all-rounder Jacques Kallis, unless it could be proved that there was no person of color capable of fulfilling the same role. Well, is there a person capable of fulfilling that role? Well, let's take a look at that. So let's see. A few notes I made here about Kallis. Let's see. Kallis is regarded as one of the greatest all-rounders of all time in cricket and South Africa's greatest batsman ever. He's the only cricketer to score over 10,000 runs and take 250 wickets in one-day internationals in Test cricket. In total, in his career, he scored 13,289 runs, took 292 wickets in his Test career. Played 166 Test matches, and in August of 2020, he was inducted into the ICC Cricket Hall of Fame, a career from 1995 to 2013. Now, how can anybody in their right mind claim that he can be replaced by anybody? The greatest player of all time, or at least one of the greatest all-rounders of all time, and you're not going to employ him because of the color of his skin, because of Cricket SA's perceived failures. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it goes far beyond this nonsense, far beyond this. And as a consequence of this, what's happening now? Well, civil rights group AfriForum has stepped up and said the following: Cricket South Africa's decision to exclusively hire black consultants can in no way be regarded as anything other than unjustifiable racial discrimination, says Ernst Ritz. He's head of policy and action at AfriForum. AfriForum takes a firm stand against any form of racial discrimination and will therefore take necessary action in this matter. It is concerning that it has become common for some forms of discrimination to be excused and justified as necessary or positive. These are dangerous and blatant double standards that need to be opposed, and as a civil rights organization, AfriForum will do exactly that, said Roots. Yes, so Ernst Roots, AfriForum have come out against this, and they're considering legal action. We've mentioned 30 cricketers that are under contract have taken issue with what's going on. Now, they're a little more opaque about, or not opaque, but a little less concerned about the issue of racial discrimination, more about the total chaos that's taking place at Cricket South Africa. It's absolute nonsense. Now, where is this all coming from? Well, we can roll the clock back, ladies and gentlemen, and we can talk about South Africa's vile and venal Minister of Sports Culture. That's Nathi Mthethwa, who in August took great exception to South African rugby players, some not even Springboks, so not playing for the national team, but South Africans playing abroad for a private organization in the United Kingdom who wore T-shirts during Premiership Rugby's virtue signaling, its empty-handed virtue signaling against racism T-shirts. They wore that. Yet they did not take a knee in support of the black supremacy, race hatred-based Black Lives Matter movement. And as a consequence, he stuck his nose into this and demanded that the South African Rugby Union investigate and take action against South African nationals for not showing fealty to a racial supremacy organization. Had they taken a knee in favor of the Klan, I'm sure that we'd be outraged. But they're not only we would not be outraged that someone takes a knee for Black Lives Matter, fealty to that race-based organization, but it's expected and demanded by the sports minister of South Africa. This injection of politics into sport is destroying professional sports the world over. The NBA has been done. Audience have tuned him out. How in the world can you claim discrimination and take issue with society when the starting salary for a rookie in the National Basketball Association is nearly $900,000 per year? By the way, did I mention that 78%, over 80% of the players in the NBA are black, vice the 13.5% of the population? Now, where's discrimination there? Is it because blacks are better players? Is it because whites are inferior players? Are those racist comments? No. It's because of the style of the game and because the game has been pushed in a certain direction, and that apparently is what fans wanted for a period of time. So there you go. 85% of the NBA being black. So what? 65% of the National Football League comprised of black players, 13.5%. Are we going to have transformation goals to reduce the number of black players in the NBA and the NFL so that they match the populations of the country? No, that's ludicrous. Why is it that the African National Congress feels its need to inject itself into every aspect of life in South Africa? Will there come a time when the ANC demands that in order to have a braai, you must be racially balanced? So in other words, in order to have a backyard cookout, you'll have to have this many black people, this many colored people, this many Indians, and this many whites. It's sheer stupidity and lunacy. Sheer stupidity and lunacy. Now, as I mentioned, Cricket South Africa is an absolute disaster, and it's been in trouble for some time now. Governance issues, we mentioned the resignation of these senior members of the board. The board itself is in disarray. Senior leadership positions, dealing with COVID-19. 2 weeks ago, we had 2 cricket players turned positive for COVID-19, all the lockdown restrictions, this Black Lives Matter, racial supremacy organization nonsense with coaches and players taking a knee and disrupting and damaging, tarnishing the reputation of the team, the Proteas, and Cricket South Africa over a spurious organization that does not deserve their fealty or their support. And conflating Black Lives Matter with racial issues. Director Graham Smith has been attacked for hiring his pals, Mark Boucher as the Proteas coach, Jacques Kallis as the batting consultant, and Paul Harris as the bowling consultant. Now, these appointments were targeted as him hiring his pals. Well, I would submit to you that cricket is a small field and you hire the best talent available. Now, the real reason they're being attacked as hires is not because they're his pals. Well, let's just be honest here. It's because they're white. That's why they're being attacked. Interesting. Had he hired all black coaches, regardless of their competency, there wouldn't have been a whiff of anything. I mean, look at the ANC. It appoints all kinds of incompetent members of its party to the parliament all the time. And we even see it appoints criminals or suspected criminals to its provincial legislatures. Like Zandile Gumede. Yes, remember that? She's now drawing a salary while millions of South Africans are jobless. Their businesses destroyed because of the ANC's decisions. Yet they sneak in Zandile Gumeda, the disgraced, under indictment, only out of prison on the basis of bail, former mayor of Durban. They appoint her to the provincial legislature and then have the audacity, the temerity, to actually consider appointing her to a leadership position in the provincial legislature as an MEC. Only a public outcry finally stopped that from happening. So she's been pushed aside, but she draws a paycheck for a job she's never done. You want to talk about corruption and patronage? This is what the ANC wants in cricket South Africa. It's what they want in rugby South Africa. It's what they want in netball South Africa. It's what they want in every aspect of life. Their only desire is to use these organizations to distort, divide South Africans on the basis of race and identity so that they can exploit that and they can get their hands on privilege. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. That's what this is all about, getting their hands on privilege. Yep, absolutely. So, cricket South Africa, is it dead? Well, if it isn't, it's close. This is a disaster between COVID, management scandals, resignation of senior officials in cricket South Africa, the racialization of everything, the fealty towards Black Lives Matter, listening to the bigotry, the intrusion of the sports minister, Nate Mtetwa, interjecting himself into rugby and into cricket, demanding that cricket hire more people of color. It's none of his damn business. It's a private organization. Get your nose out of it. If people don't like the fact that more than half of the players in cricket are white, then don't go to cricket matches. If you don't like the fact that 80% of the NBA is black, then don't watch the NBA. If you don't like the fact that 95% of the NHL is white, then don't watch it. But don't try to artificially force transformation. It isn't transformation. It's racial exclusion. And there's no better case of this than Jacques Kallis, one of the greatest all-rounders in the history of cricket and the greatest batsman in South African history, now potentially unemployed because he's white? How could you possibly make a case for finding a coach who is better suited? Now, whether he's a great coach or not remains to be seen. We have to see him actually coach. Playing is one thing, coaching is quite another. Some people are much more adept at being a coach than being a player. And some great players never make the transition to being a coach. Wayne Gretzky, greatest player of all time, didn't make the best coach in the National Hockey League. Not the most successful. And we see quite the inverse. Average players become amazing managers. Johnny Oates, average baseball player, fantastic manager. But making the argument that Jacques Kallis should be removed from cricket South Africa because his pal, Graham Smith, hired him, or because not enough people of color are there, that has nothing to do with excellence. It has nothing to do with performance. It has nothing to do with anything other than sticking racial nonsense into the sport. And cricket South Africa has done this to itself. It absolutely has done it to itself. Its management, with corrupt members involved, being forced to resign, with its lack of attention to the issue of diversity, and with its conduct over Black Lives Matter. It has brought this on itself. Will cricket South Africa survive? Well, we'll see. We'll see. We already see rugby South Africa, South African Rugby Union, Currie Cup, virtually empty stadiums, nobody going there. We hear people belly aching about the price of tickets, but frankly, the price of tickets is not high. It's not high. Certainly not by international standards. Even on a basis of per capita income, they aren't high ticket prices. You can get affordable seats at a Currie Cup game, yet the stadiums are empty. 20 years ago, they were full. Why? Well, one reason is politics has been injected into the sport. Utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. Well, folks, I haven't even touched on this vile article by Ferdosa Munda in ESPN where she talks about how issues of race have cast South African cricket turbulence this winter. Yes, haven't even talked about that. She has some interesting points here, all of which I'm happy to refute, and perhaps I'll save that for another cricket video, as I'm not prone to do cricket videos. Interesting game, but not quite the game of rugby, which is my preference. Well, there you have it. Cricket South Africa on the death's door, on his deathbed. Well, folks, this is what happens when a political party uses race to divide a people. Does it sound familiar, South Africa? Does it sound familiar, Washington, Portland, Seattle, Harrisburg, New York, D.C., San Francisco? It does sound familiar when people use race and ethnicity to divide others. Such a sad state of affairs. Well, folks, if you found this cricket video to be interesting or thought-provoking, feel free to become a subscriber by pushing that subscription button right down there. And be sure to toggle the bell icon because YouTube may or may not update you. But if you don't push the icon, you never will get any updates. Maybe you'll get them by pushing it. Feel free to leave a comment. If they're abusive, they'll simply be laughed at or deleted. Or we use them to embarrass you on a video in the future if you use an abusive one. Finally, I ask that you smash the like button because likes drive viewership. Thank you so much for your patronage, ladies and gentlemen. Have a pleasant day. And, well, don't be out buying those cricket bats because you might not have a Proteas team to play for in the future. God bless.